All right, this is the K Cup, episode 13, if you can believe it. You got any problems with calling an episode 13? You ain't in all that worried about the number stuff, right?
No.
Okay, good. Me neither.
Episode 13. I mean, I wouldn't want to call it
the number 13 too, so.
Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't be in favor of episode 666, but, I'm okay with, I'm not going to get too out of line with all
the mark of the episode, the mark of the YouTube. The dark mark of the YouTube. All right, so here we go. We're going to we're going to go for episode 13 of the K Cup. Take one, action. Hey, welcome back to the K Cup, episode 13 coming at you. And today we're here again with Jon Kelly, the CEO and founder of the Kelly Construction. I screwed up.
Of the Kelly Construction.
He hates it when I say the, so we're going to start over. Okay, here we go. So, episode 13 of the K Cup, take two, action. Welcome back to the K Cup. This is Joe Nortrup, your host, and I am here with founder and CEO Jon Kelly. And this week, we're going to be discussing the challenges and the requirements of becoming a general contractor in the commercial construction space. Today, we're going to talk about 4 specific areas. Of course, we could talk about this for hours and hours because it's a lot. But he's going to touch on 4 key areas that he thought would be great to share with y'all. He's going to be talking about licensing and requirements for that. Managing liability and risk, because we know this is an industry that has a lot of risk associated with it. And kind of in that same vein, but point number 3, he's going to talk about insurance a little bit, and he's going to drill in specifically on what we call bonding for a project. And then we're going to wrap that up with, once you overcome these opportunities, these requirements, really screwed that up, didn't I? Once you overcome all these challenges, and meet these requirements to become a general contractor, then how do you go about, realizing some opportunities for all that effort? So let's go ahead and get started, Jon. What do you say?
Let's do it.
How we doing, man? 13.
Good.
All right, I'm excited. This thing just keeps rolling on, so we're gonna roll with it.
Definitely.
So talking about challenges and requirements of becoming a general contractor, that first point. Licensing and requirements around licensing. That part, just to me as an outsider, not a licensed general contractor, on the outside looking in, that seems like that could be daunting a little bit. So tell us about, your experience with that, and then what, a person would be faced with today wanting to, cross that great divide and become a general contractor.
Right. Yeah. So, just thinking about, one of the titles of the show, we were kind of calling it obstacles, requirements, challenges.
Yeah.
I think we kind of ended up on this title based on, the audience that we're talking to. There's going to be different perspective. And I think that just, hearing it called a requirement or a challenge is going to really kind of point to which audience that we're talking to.
Yeah.
Obviously, thinking about, licensing and, the legal aspects of it in the sense of becoming a general contractor, that's when it becomes a challenge or an obstacle, if you will. And generally speaking, as I talk about it now, it don't seem like it's that big a deal. But yeah. I remember early on starting 17, 18 years ago, that going through that whole, let me go get licensed, let me go do all the testing. There's certain financial requirements that have to be met in order to even to be able to be considered for a test. You have to have, specific insurance requirements met, that a lot of things that when you're young and you're just getting started seem like, very difficult things to kind of pull together.
Yeah.
So that is quite an obstacle, and it can take some time. Typically you would need to be working with an accountant, which the first time I ever approached an accountant about this, they literally sent me home. Like, look, you got a lot of work to do.
We ain't got nothing to account here.
Yeah, that's right. Like, you got a lot. You have to go really build your financial stability. You got to go do a lot of things before you can actually sit, before this license or set to get a license.
Yeah.
So that actually was a little discouraging at the time, but it also lit a fire. Like, you know what? I don't think it's going to be near as long as you're thinking. So anyway, that would be like some of the challenges. Get your accounting in place. Then you got to find some time to prepare for these tests. Hopefully you in the field and you have a general understanding of how construction works. But there is some time and prep that goes into preparing for tests and then scheduling testing, and then there's a waiting period, which now this is a lot faster turnaround than it was 17 years ago. I mean, you can take a test and get a license a lot quicker in today's world.
Yeah.
So, as far as somebody looking to become a contractor or a young guy wanting to start a company, this would be some of the obstacles or the challenges that you may face. But now looking at it from a different perspective, from, maybe one of our watchers really? Maybe one of our viewers that's looking to hire a contractor, this would actually be a requirement that you would want. You want to make sure that you find somebody that has done the due diligence, that is licensed correctly, that is insured correctly, that has been through this, and obviously you do want somebody with financial stability. So
how do they verify that someone has a license? Just real quick.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to do. I mean, like in Louisiana, the State Board of Contractors has a website. You can pop on there real quick. You can search for whatever company you're working with. It clearly shows you what areas they're licensed in. Gotcha. And that's another thing too, is like, as that client, you want to make sure that they do carry the correct license, because there's different types of license that you can have. Someone might sell themselves as a licensed contractor, and they may be, but they just may not be a licensed builder or licensed, you know what I mean? So all that information can be found on the Board of Contractors.
Okay.
So that'd be the easiest way. So I think that, number one, that's the two areas that becomes an obstacle or a requirement right off the bat. And then, moving into the, I believe managing risk was the second one that you mentioned. And I mean, managing risk to me largely comes down to the insurance portion of it. So the state automatically says, look, just in order to do any kind of construction work, you have to have this bare minimum insurance.
Yeah.
So, as a guy looking to get into the business, that's not oftentimes that hard of a requirement to make. I mean, you need to have a little bit of money to go get some insurance. But if you're looking at starting a construction business, I'm assuming that you have some money.
You've been gearing up for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's not a really big obstacle, but certainly a requirement. But where it becomes more of an obstacle and more of a requirement as your company grows and as you're looking to move into bigger projects, or maybe you're moving into the industrial world or some other big companies, the insurance requirements can really be raised and really get to a position where now they're not just looking for just minimum general liability, but they're wanting general liability. They want umbrella policies. They want all these different things for job specific policies like builder's risk and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. All those things can become a challenge because it just gets more and more expensive.
Yeah. So can I back you up for just one second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you were just talking about if someone's looking to hire a general contractor, you said that they could go on the what is it, the Board of Contractors, Louisiana State Board of Contractors, and verify that they're licensed. Does that also verify that they're insured? Like, could someone have a license and potentially not be insured or not be carrying the right insurance at the same time?
I mean, I guess there's a chance that there could be a lapse in coverage or whatever. Maybe the Board of Contractors don't know that, but as soon as they get information, as soon as they get wind of that information, I'm sure that they're going to flag that account and do whatever. Yeah. Again, technology is way better now than it was when we first started.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see when I first started that had insurance lapse, the Board of Contractors probably wouldn't have been notified for a long time, and there could have certainly been a chance where somebody could have hired us based off of seeing us on the website and thinking that we meet all the boxes.
Yeah.
And we not. I would assume now that there's probably a check and balance that's probably tighter than what it was then.
Yeah.
I'm sure that as soon as insurance is lapsed, probably the Board of Contractors is notified by the insurance company. Yeah. Not positive on that. I really don't know.
Yeah. But could be automated.
But either way, I mean, from that perspective, If an owner is looking to hire a contractor, once they verify that they are licensed, they're going to want to do a little more due diligence. They're going to ask for that certificate of insurance, and then they could actually verify with the carrier, the insurance company, that they still do indeed have that.
There you go.
That contractor covered.
Yeah, so that's the process.
Yeah, so that would really be the correct process without having to make too many assumptions or any assumptions, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So getting back to the insurance thing and managing risk and everything, you had mentioned in the list of different types of policies they may want you to have. I think you sort of mentioned bonding. So could you kind of explain like when bonding is needed and what that really entails? Like how does the amount of bond relate to the project? Things like that. Just the basic nuts and bolts.
Yeah. So bonding is just like the other things. It can be a challenge or an obstacle, but then for the owner, it can actually be a requirement and a tool that makes them feel comfortable with the situation.
Yeah.
And bonding is bonding is similar to insurance in the fact that it for the owner, it gives them protection if the builder isn't paying their bills or if they're not doing things according to contract. Then they've required the builder to provide them with a bond, which says there's another company out here that's backing the builder up that says, look, we have confidence that our builder is going to do this, this, and this. But if he's not, we'll back him up.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the challenge for the owner in that aspect is it comes with a cost.
Yeah.
And typically bonds aren't that cheap, but you really see them used often in large projects where there's a lot of money, to be put out
at risk.
and those bonds are expensive, but when you're talking about a ton of money, it just really puts them in a lot more comfortable spot. I mean, a lot of times you'll see banks require this type stuff, or organizations that do a lot of development, they'll have their own in-house requirements and they'll require these kind of bonds.
Yeah.
But where that gets difficult for a builder, specifically a newer builder without a big history of a lot of big projects or without a big financial history, then they're only going to give you so much room to work.
Yeah.
Before you have to go prove yourself and go show that, hey, we can do this and we're going to be financially sound or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's the obstacle. One, just getting the initial bond, because much like the accountant early on, I was pretty much laughed out of a bonding office too the first time I ever went to talk to a bonding guy. In the private world, I don't want to say there's not that much. The private world, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to bonding, but in the public world, bonds are like almost always required. So if you're looking to get into that public world, then you have to be bonded right off, and that's kind of the avenue that we took. We kind of started off. Well, we started off doing private work, but then we moved to the public side just based on the fact that I could see there was a lot of work on the public side.
Yeah.
So once I went for that initial bond, I really understood and started to realize what it took to be bonded.
Yeah.
Much at my expense. But there was a challenge there because I couldn't meet the need to be bonded.
Yeah.
So it took a number of years to be able to work through that process, to get it figured out. But at that point, obviously, a bond was an obstacle for me.
Yeah.
But for the owner, in this case, most public entities, it was an insurance policy, essentially.
Yeah.
It made them, they were allowed to move forward based on a company that maybe they didn't know or didn't have any experience, but somebody was saying, look, we'll bond them, we'll do this. Yeah. So it opened up doors for me in that sense. So it's an obstacle here, it's a requirement for them.
It's an interesting point because we've talked in other episodes about, we've gone over like bid days, different types of contracts, and of course, both of those episodes brought up the subject of public work. And we talked about public work having its benefits. One is that there's a lot of it, generally speaking.
Yep.
At least in this area, there seems to be. So that provides a new contractor with a lot of opportunity. But probably something we didn't dial in on or drill in on as much regarding all that opportunity is the need for a bond. Like with the public sector, like you're saying, bonds are more common than in the private sector. So is there a threshold or something, or like if with a new general contractor starting out that's going to want to do public bid just because of the opportunity level there?
Yeah.
What kind of threshold do they kind of have to meet to get their foot in the door with public work?
Well, honestly, it really, are you talking about when the bond is required, or
just like how much, like what size of project, for example, could they get on a bond
yeah?
that would be
So
what you would consider reasonable for them to afford to get started?
well, the way it works,
starting out.
the way it works is the bond is actually dependent upon the job. The bond has to be a certain percentage of the total value of the job.
Okay.
Typically 5%. So, well, the bid bond is typically 5% of the job. Performance and payment bond, you have to do it 100%. But the way it works basically is the bonding company wants to see so many dollars per however much you're trying to bond in the bank. And then they also want to see a work history showing that you can actually go perform this work, even though you're financially strong and you have plenty of money.
Yeah.
Where's the history to show that you can do it?
Yeah.
So once you kind of meet those two blocks, really the doors are open. But what it looks like for most companies and what it's looked like for us is you start off small.
Yeah.
You go in and you do a $200,000 job that requires bonding.
Yeah.
And you do 2 or 3 of those and you make money on them. And the bonding company has confidence. Okay, they can do this. So then you move up to a $1 million job and you do a few of those. You make money. You do whatever.
Yeah.
The whole time you're building your cash. You're building your reputation with the bond company. You're building your resume, your experience, and you just gradually kind of grow.
So it's a process of several steps.
Yeah. So it's just a little bit. It's a little bit time consuming, and like anything, money has a huge part in it. I mean,
sure.
The stronger you are financially, the more money you have in the bank, the more apt they're going to be to get on board with you.
Yeah.
So
okay.
That's kind of how that the bonding part of it works.
Cool. So let's talk about you've just laid out some of the requirements and challenges, and again you came at it from both someone wanting to become a general contractor, their challenges, but also you kind of mentioned how if someone's hiring a general contractor, you want to make sure that general contractor's jumped through these hoops and meets all those requirements. But say you've done all that, now you're a general contractor, say you can do some minimal bonding. How do you go about really getting the reward for all that effort? Where are the opportunities coming from and all that?
Yeah, so that's part of the challenge, right, for the builder or for the general contractors.
Yeah.
Is like, how do we go find opportunities? How do we go do this stuff?
Yeah.
And obviously, public bid is somewhere you can start because there's lots of opportunities. They're posted everywhere. There, as long as you meet all the requirements that we've been talking about today, you can bid on them. Yeah. So that's one place to start, and that's an easier path to an obstacle of finding a project.
Yeah.
However, there are tons of companies looking at those opportunities.
Yeah.
So you're going to spend a lot of time bidding to not reap a lot of rewards in a sense.
Yeah.
So the obstacle is how do I make that work now? Like, okay, I got a bunch of opportunities, but how do I go be the cheapest and still be able to make money?
Yeah.
So one obstacle kind of leads to another obstacle, if you will.
Yeah.
And along that public bid market, I mean, you can find a path, and we have. I mean, we've been very successful, doing some public bid work for a number of years. But it continues to be an obstacle to figure out how to get the job. How do I go, beat these other guys or be more competitive and could still continue to make money. The other part of it is how do I find profit opportunities? How do I find individuals or companies that are looking to build and approach them? But then also, if they don't know who I am, like, how do you build a reputation and be able to be recognized so that when that opportunity does come up?
Yeah.
And that's something that we continue to still work on, obviously, day in and day out.
Yeah, you're getting onto something that I was going to pick your brain about there.
Yeah, so it's like, I remember early on, I was already doing some public work, and I wanted to be able to to do some shopping center build outs or an actual shopping center or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started approaching, commercial real estate agents and other entities, but I really just didn't have a lot to bring. I didn't have a big resume. I only had a couple little jobs. And so it ended up being a real obstacle to kind of move in that direction and get started until really I just basically had 5 or 6 years of just kind of public work, or, we've talked about some of our different avenues. I mean, we do a ton of work at LSU and other places that are still public work, but it's a little different scenario to get the job.
Yeah.
So once we had that 5 or 6 years of experience and had a few decent jobs, I mean, obviously this other side started to open up a little bit for us, and we had built some relationships with architects and different people.
Yeah.
But it was a real obstacle to find those opportunities and to make good on them, or find those opportunities that we could make good on and we could convert. And then just like the other conversations we had early, the perspective from maybe an individual looking to hire a contractor, the requirement in this situation, it's I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, let me help you out, because I got a burning question I wanted to ask you, so it'll give you plenty to talk about. So today we see a real shift in how people are doing business, and even in a traditional business like this, general contracting, that's been operating in a certain way for a long time. You would say it's ensconced. It's a rock, I guess, or a pillar of business in the community in a certain way. But we can see how there's a lot of emphasis on what people, and I think this word's overused, but it still applies. A lot of emphasis today on building a brand and building a presence, as a company of any kind. Really, it doesn't really matter what business you're in. Like, when would you recommend a new general contractor who may only be able to tap into that public work initially? How soon do you think they should start developing their own brand? In the way that we do it today in the digital economy, we do it through a different media, through different means than the traditional way that we used to. It's just the way the economies are evolving.
Yeah.
How soon would you say they need to get started on something like that and really establishing themselves as a force in that industry, in the local market?
Yeah, before the first job. I mean, they need to be working on that. It needs to be something they've been dreaming up and thinking about and working towards before they ever even started any kind of work.
Yeah.
But certainly be building that constantly and thinking about that as much as you're thinking about the next job and what you're going to get. Be thinking about building that brand and what does that look like and what's your message, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that needs to be going really before the company, but for sure you need to be spending as much time focusing on that as actually productivity and getting the job done and all that.
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand. And to get those other opportunities, you're going to need that.
Yeah.
Because this one opportunity could lead to another job, but this brand and this visibility could lead to a multitude of jobs.
Yeah. It's crazy with there's even a lot of CEOs today that do a lot of business on their handheld device.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a presence, a digital presence, that can show up on a handheld device or on a tablet,
right,
you may never even get heard of or found out about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So jumping back, I remember what I was wanting to talk about on that last point we were making. We were talking about the opportunity standpoint from an end user, an owner, somebody looking to hire a contractor.
Yeah.
So this particular person has an opportunity, but how do you find the correct contractor to present that opportunity to?
Yes. That's a good question.
So
we just kind of answered it, but yeah.
Right.
In a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So some of the requirements would be all the stuff that we've talked about today. You want to make sure that you have people that check those boxes.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, you got to consider the type of project you have and what you're willing to pay on it. And I think that you can go get a very high a high-end, very experienced contractor, built to last type company that does millions and millions and millions, they're probably not going to be your best path forward on a small build out.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to go find a guy that's working in the back of this truck that don't meet any of these other boxes, trying to save some dollars.
Yeah.
So
the one-man show, one-man band type of deal.
So for people who are just starting to build, and for builders who are new in the industry but have these requirements, that's a great time for these guys to connect and be able to kind of grow together, specifically if this person is looking to do multiple offices or multiple developments or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that, for that person with those opportunities, that's kind of what you weigh this project. Like, how much experience does the contractor need to be able to really go do this job, based on your feeling? Because, if you're not a contractor, you don't really know exactly. But, you know how difficult or how easy of a project it should be.
Even if a contractor is generally new in the game, and of course, even a new contractor may have years of experience before they make that move. You know what I mean? So it doesn't mean because they're new to general contracting that they're new to construction.
Right.
So what would that contractor have to offer that individual that you're talking about, that potential client, that would put them at ease? What would you imagine would make that seem palatable to them?
Yeah, I think you just got to check all the boxes that we talked about today. I think that's the first thing you do to put everybody's mind at ease. You show them that you're meeting all the state and local requirements.
Yeah.
You show them that you can manage, or you can protect them from some of the risk, with your insurance requirements.
Yeah.
But from there, it becomes a personal experience.
Yeah.
You have to click well with that person.
Yeah.
You have to in our case, I want to show them that we're very honest, that we're going to be very straightforward. We want to work together as a team.
Yeah.
And really, you hate to, you don't want to call it selling, but you want to build that relationship, and also share your experience and show what you're capable of through resume. Like, maybe if it's a dental clinic, maybe, look, we've done 3 of these and they're very successful. And maybe you connect them with a past client that you've done the work for or something. But
that's kind of what I was thinking of. If a contractor is in it for the right reasons and in it for the long haul, they're not just a fly by night looking to make some quick money and move on down the road. They're going to be willing to spend some time with you.
Yeah.
And really answer all your questions as a potential client. Put all their cards on the table, and in that exchange, I think that's where the real confidence is built. That's where, like you said, it really requires relationship building, and like, if it's the right kind of client, it could be an opportunity that could help build their business for years to come. Like you were saying, that's a great time for, like, maybe a beginning investor that may be investing on a small scale, but like you said, it wouldn't serve them well to go out and get some contractor that's doing $80 million a year,
right?
Because they're going to probably charge them way more than what their small project really,
right?
Should have to spend to get the project done, and yet they may be able to form some sort of relationship with this young contractor,
right,
or new contractor, that they would serve them both well for years to come.
Right.
So, but you got to be thinking like that. You have to have that mindset.
Exactly.
That's really that's the business side of being a builder.
Right.
You're not just putting on bags and going out and getting dirty all day. This is really a business. It's a profession that requires business acumen to really do it well.
Yeah.
And you're actually mostly, maybe in the very beginning, you might be doing some of the work yourself, which I know I've heard stories, from when you first started, how you really did have to, perform some of the work yourself to make things work.
Right.
But by and large, you're going to move past that as soon as possible and go into managing subcontractors and taking on those projects and really getting good at managing all that. So,
I think truthfully, once you get through those early hurdles, there's lots of companies that are qualified that check all the simple boxes that we talked about today. And after that, it just comes down to relationships and how you can, how you can make somebody feel good about choosing your company.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. I think that was pretty good coverage of those 4 points. I think you kind of looked at them from different facets, different angles, and hopefully that answers some questions for if anyone's watching this that has been considering throwing your hat in the ring, becoming a general contractor. Yes, there are some challenges. There are some hills to climb, but it's clearly not undoable because there's plenty of competition in that space. So don't let that overwhelm you. It's like anything. You just you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So you just move through the steps and got to have patience. But more pointedly, and you've expressed it multiple times when you first started talking about the different challenges that you face, you got to have determination.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to have that no quit attitude. So.
Yeah, that goes way beyond just the beginning phases of this business. I mean,
yeah,
there's lots of times you have to have a lot of determination.
That's right. Yeah. I guess all the glory comes later, If there is any, it comes way later. But anyways, all right. Appreciate your insight today, Mr. Jon. I'm just going to wrap it up for episode 13. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, hit us up in the comments. We'd love to get feedback from y'all, and we don't mind responding to any comments, any questions that you might have, and share the podcast with a friend if you found any value in that. So come back next week, and we'll have another show ready for you. What do you think?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's go. All right. We'll see you later. Thanks.